आपको फायदा होगा, जब तुम ही ढोओगे तो मैं क्या करूँ? कल ला दे भाई, ताकत भी है, आता है भी ताकत भी है, गाय टीका ला दिए चला गए, तुम नीचे के जितना कमाना तुम जाओ, मैं चौथी मंजिल में मैं उतार कर ला सकूँ।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Knowledge Club has gathered again for another interesting talk. And in our usual format, I think a little anecdote is called for. So here it goes. ये थोड़ी पुराने ज़माने की बात है. In the Punjab, when the communications were not all that good. The roads had not come up, railways were indifferent, buses were no longer, they were not there at that time. So a young man, he decides to go a couple of villages away, some distance away, to meet family and friends. तो वहाँ पे उसको मैसेज आता है कि you better get back by tomorrow morning. लड़की वाले तेरे को देखने आ रहे हैं. So panic, कैसे जाएं? So he asked for a horse. So ढूंढ ढांड के one horse is produced, जो actually टांगे वाला घोड़ा है. So what can be done? Nothing can be done. So he starts off early morning. Late in the evening, he's gets onto the horse and the horse starts galloping. 1 hour, 2 hours, पसीने पसीने निकल के he halts the horse, gets down, थपकी थुपकी लगाई, थोड़ा उसको ठंडा किया, gets on the horse again, क्योंकि टांगे वाला घोड़ा he suddenly finds there's no टांगा behind, so he's off. 1 more hour, पसीने पसीने उतर के फिर उतरा, फिर उसको पानी वानी पिलाया, थपकी थुपकी दी. Third time he got on and again it took off. Then he halted, got down, घोड़े के पाँव पकड़ लिए, कहता गुरु लड़की वाले मेरे को देखने आ रहे हैं, तेरे को नहीं. So now this evening, ISIS or ISIL, myth or reality, and the repercussions on India. It's a fascinating subject. As we discussed last time, and Mr. Salve was here, it's so relevant today. Somewhere out of the blue in the Middle East, which has a history of turmoil, and conflict between Christian, Jew, Muslims, Shias, Sunnis. Suddenly this has cropped up. Everybody is wondering, what is this animal that has come? Is it Al-Qaeda outfit? Has it been born out of Al-Qaeda? Does it have any affiliation with it? What exactly is it? And suddenly it's gained notoriety. What is the difference? How is it going to be resolved? So to do all that, we have with us a very eminent personality, Mr. SAEED NAQVI. It's difficult to introduce a person of his stature, but he started his education in La Martiniers in Lucknow, then moved on to do his journalism in Cardiff University, and then he went on to do international studies in Princeton in the United States. And thereafter he joined the Statesman, and he had a very interesting a report that he put out, in which he took the famous photographer Raghu Rai, and if you recollect, there was a very famous yogi, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who had his ashram in Rishikesh, and they did a beautiful piece there. And thereafter he joined the Indian Express in various ranks, and never looked back, because he went on to commentating on TV, he wrote books, he's traveled over 100 countries, he's interviewed the world's who's who, Nelson Mandela, Henry Kissinger, Colonel Gaddafi, Netanyahu, name it, and he's interviewed them. And I think we couldn't have found a better person to discuss this particular subject, Mr. Syed NAQVI.
I was General Aban, ladies and gentlemen, I was beginning to collect my thoughts on this subject when I received word that the Iraqi army has shot down 2 British planes in the area controlled by ISIS or ISIL. So as the general was, मैंने तो कमाल है भी, दामन पर कोई छींट, ना खंजर पे कोई दाग, तुम कत्ल करो हो कि करामात करो. So we don't know. Rashomon, Kurosawa's great masterpiece movie, is one of the greatest, and you can now these days download it and watch it. It is one of the greatest films ever made. The same murder, Kurosawa, with his skillful eye for detail, he plays it out on the screen, the same murder from 5 different perspectives. That of the murderer, that of the grass cutter who was lying in the grass and watching this murder take place, the Sais who was leading this princess through the forest, and then by a Japanese incantation, he raises the ghost of the princess, who then proceeds to give her version of the murder. And then the priest goes away, nodding his head. But what is the truth? But what is the truth? So anyone who claims to understand exactly what is going on in West Asia, and particularly this phenomenon of ISIS and ISIL, and what is the difference in the two emphases. Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or in the Levant. So there's an emphasis on, if you really want to be fastidious, it goes back to Sykes-Picot. Where do you want to put the emphasis? I think, if you will permit me, let me, for my own sake and for yours, build up the narrative from where I think it begins. Let us go back in December 2010, when a fellow called Bouazizi, a vendor in Tunis, burns himself alive and launches what became the so-called Arab Spring. Everybody clapped. The youth bulge had come out on the street. And two gentlemen lost their throat. Hosni Mubarak, long-standing champion of few know what, but a pillar of some kind of stability in West Asia, ousted. Before him, Ben Ali, Zainul Abidin bin Ali. Now that's another complication. The whole conflict is about Shias and Sunnis, and here as the president of a Sunni state of Tunisia who has a name, Zainul Abidin bin Ali, which cannot but be a Shia name. Now here you have a paradox which resolves itself only if you understand all the nuances. So let me begin from the beginning. These two gentlemen are gone. King Abdullah is convalescing in Germany. He comes out and he says, look, what have you done, you American? Two of our greatest pillars gone, friends. Never, he swore, no monarchies will be allowed to fall hereafter. February 2011, he makes this statement. No monarchies, monarchies meaning what? Monarchies meaning me, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, GCC, Qatar, Jordan, and the King of Morocco, plus whichever dictatorship they are. And then began another game. The so-called Arab Spring is blocked and it is given another spin. Now the game is all these GCC countries are mobilized and they start sending in what we used to call cross-border terrorism here from Pakistan is cross-border terrorism from Saudi Arabia, from everything bordering Syria. All manner of arms are funneled in to dislodge Assad. Now why Assad, you might ask? Several reasons, but one of the reasons is the following. Because this Arab Spring is going nowhere, in the earlier era, the three countries which stood out with the Soviet Union in that region were Iraq, which has already been taken care of, Syria, which is now going to be taken care of, and Libya, which subsequently, as you know, was taken care of. Let's take the narrative to Syria. Syria has three important dimensions. One is the Israelis are interested. What, you might ask, is the Israeli interest? The Israeli interest is that they are plagued by 2 or 3 formations there. Don't forget, Golan Heights is Syria. Don't forget that southern Lebanon is Hezbollah. Don't forget that Hamas is Gaza. And all of these regimes are patronized by Iran. So, in this chain, if we remove Assad, then if you look at the geography, the chain is broken from Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, one chain is broken, and then it becomes easy to get to the next one, and the idea is to take care of this crescent. This is the Israeli interest. This Israeli interest coincides with the Saudi and GCC interest, which is that the patron of this particular crescent happens to be Iran, and therefore the only way to check Iran is to weaken everything around it, and particularly Assad in Syria. So everything is thrown into, at one stage, Lakhdar Brahimi made a statement that when a delegation was being sought from these various people fighting Assad, he said, how do we send a delegation to Geneva? Because there are 64 militant groups inside Syria at that particular moment. So how do you form a delegation? And the worst, of course, the Russians threw the wrench in the works, and they said, over our dead bodies, because we will allow everything else, but not Syria. Why? Because that is their only access to that part of the ocean. I will not get into other conspiracy theories because oil is also involved. It always is. But let me come to the ISIS quickly. So, Assad does not go. From 2011 to up to now, the greatest power on earth then has tried its best with all its regional allies to oust Assad and has not been able to. So there are various messages. Partly, of course, they were checkmated by the Russians. The Russians just wouldn't allow it, and they said, okay. They said, oh, well, here is all the evidence for chemical weapons. They said, all right. They caught them in the nick of time. They said, all right, you're going to catch them on chemical weapons. Let's go to Geneva. They couldn't form a delegation, so that issue was dropped. Meanwhile, now they have mobilized another country. This country happens to be Turkey. Turkey, structured on Mustafa Kemal Pasha's very secular edifice, backed by the army. The army is the guarantor of Turkish secularism. And there, because of a variety of reasons, the intifada happens, and then the televised intifada, televised brutalization of Iraq, televised this place, the Balkans, Bosnia, Herzegovina. They, for 4 years, 1992 to 1995, daily brutalization of the Muslims in Bosnia on live television. Now that had a peculiar effect on the secular Turkish regime. A man called NAQVI Erbakan, with a completely Muslim Brotherhood party, Akhwanul Muslimin virtually of Turkey, came to power. Because the people, agitated by live television. Television is not understood here as the instrument of a great deal of political turmoil in that part of the world. And here, we shall discuss that sometime. That we are, there must be friends here who know Rajan Abhyankar. Myself and Rajan Abhyankar, who was ambassador both in Damascus and in Turkey, we found ourselves in Damascus. Just about a year and a half ago. Earlier, I had found myself in Damascus again with a man called Edward Peck. He was an American diplomat in West Asia who was on an academic work, and we were traveling to Hama, Home, and Dera in that area, and we came back to Damascus. When I came back to Damascus, I found that the American ambassador, American ambassador there was Robert Stephen Ford. Robert Stephen Ford and his French counterpart were going to all these three agitated centers. And I found myself in President Assad's office. I said, I don't seem to understand this. There is this upsurge, and you are American ambassador is going along with the French counterpart to all these three stations. Why can't you stop it? The person, very high up, took me aside and he said, SAEED, you're talking.